This is the heat transfer troubleshooting session. So we're going to talk a lot about what can go wrong and really what to watch out for when you're investing in a heat press, or really once you have a heat press, some of the common challenges that we're seeing apparel decorators face with any type of heat press. So our goal is, if you have the right equipment, you also need to have the right technique and the right know-how to navigate some of these common challenges. We're hopeful to point out what we think are four of the top major themes and challenges that we see from decorators like you, and give you some tips and techniques to overcome those. So certainly this is a session that your participation is welcome. If you have questions, if you have challenges that you're facing, here's where you get that advice. And it's probably something that I've seen before, we've seen before, and we can certainly help you out through this presentation. So I do have a bit of a PowerPoint to kind of keep me on track and guide me along. But if you haven't noticed, I also have a couple heat presses beside me. The small office space out of my home that I'm working in today is getting pretty warm. So we got the air condition cranking because we have both heat presses plugged in, ready to rock for this presentation. Going to try to demo as much as we can to give you the proper technique. So without further ado, we'll jump straight into the presentation all around heat transfer troubleshooting. So when we consider some of the common problems with heat applied graphics, really this problem headlines the list, is that after you've applied the graphic to your shirt, either it's not applying correctly, and so we're actually having issues at the point of application with adhesion, or even worse than that, we've applied a graphic, we've sent that out our door, and then we have problems with it peeling or coming off, right? And this is a sign that something has gone wrong in the heat application. And so when we consider what can go wrong with application when something is either A, not applying at all correctly, or peeling correctly, I want to make a couple assumptions first. Number one is we need to be dealing with a high quality heat transfer. Certainly there are heat transfer choices on the market that can have application issues. If you find yourself in a transfer brand that's having consistent application issues, odds are it's time to shop for a new transfer, especially if you're having success on that heat press with other brands. But the number one reason we see transfers not applying is really the build of the heat press itself. And some of the transfer technologies that you've seen here today and that you'll see in this demo, the application is kind of a tight window. So it's not something where we want a 30-degree fluctuation on our press to up or down. We call out the specific time, temperature, and pressure, the trinity of heat printing, to get an accurate quality result. But we're counting that that heat press is delivering the result. And so what you see drawn within the Hotronix press is the micro wound heater that you get in every Hotronix heat press that you invest in. And so this micro wound heater guarantees that there is even heat distribution throughout the press. And so not only is it a micro wound heater guaranteeing no cold spots on the platen, which can be an issue with some of the cheaper build presses, but it's also a thick heater for heat retention. And so what I like to say is, if you're seeing peeling issues on your very first transfer out of the box for a day, a couple things that I'm going to recommend. Number one is make it a habit every time you walk up to your heat press to start pressing for the day after it's started up. You want to just preheat that lower platen. Okay. And that's a best tip on any heat press. Just go ahead and lock your heat press down, hold it against the lower platen, or lock it down for 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and just get that lower platen warmed for the day for your first shirt receiving the application. Because what happens is, after you press a dozen shirts, of course, once you get to shirt number 2, 3, 4, 5, you got warmth coming from underneath. And so a lot of these applications are assuming we're not loading onto a cold platen. And I've been into some cold climates or some cold shops where this lower platen can be quite cold, especially when we're changing platens and moving from, say, a 16 by 20 platen to another style that's maybe been in storage. Loading on a cold platen is an issue. So always start by preheating that lower platen before your first application, and that will help with some of your not applying or not peeling correct issues. Now, where it becomes more of an issue is really where we have issues when we're into like item number 30 or item number 40 or item number 50 on the job. And if you're noticing progressively worse release on your transfers as you get into applications that are further down on the quantity list, what happens is your heater is probably not keeping up with how fast you're pressing. And so we have heat retention issues. And so heat retention issues, unfortunately, on some machines, it doesn't trigger quick enough on the control board. And so we could literally be on shirt number 30 and our heat press is saying it's at 300 degrees, but we've pressed 30 fleece garments. It's really just absorbing the heat. And the heat press build isn't quality enough to be able to trigger that heater to reheat as quick as possible. It's losing so much heat. And if you've seen my video where I actually cut apart the heat press, some of the heat retention issues come to machines that are just built with too thin of a heater. If you were to cut apart this Hotronix press and compare it to, say, some other heat presses on the market, you'd find that in this press, you have about a 1/2 inch thick heater, where that heating element that we're illustrating and illuminating in the photo is cast in. And that's going to mean that that chunk of heater is going to maintain heat even on many thousand piece jobs. Also, this machine is built where the communication is through a probe in the digital display. So you can trust what it says on the digital display is what it is on the machine within 3 to 5 degrees accuracy. On some other machines, we see thin 1/8 inch heaters, and that's why it might be a lighter weight machine, might be a lower cost machine. That heater just loses heat and it's not built to retain heat. And so you want to be careful on those jobs. Now, if you don't have the money right now to invest in a Hotronix, you probably just want to consider that as you're doing larger jobs. Give that heat press time in between applications to make sure it's retaining heat, and have yourself a tool to check the temperature. Now, I know a lot of people like the temperature guns. That is one way to check the temperatures. Those aren't always 100% accurate because it can vary based on the angle that you're shooting the heater at. And so we actually recommend temperature strips to be able to check that temperature. It's a cheap accessory that you can get from your Hotronix supplier. You can lock down the heat press, and those strips will light up when you lock them down on all parts of the platen. And so you can be consistent and understand that you're getting even heat across the platen because we want to make sure that machine's in calibration. It's not uncommon for any machine, regardless of the build quality over time, to come out of calibration, especially if it's under heavy use, or maybe if you're moving it a lot, if you're traveling with the machine. And so make sure you know the steps to recalibrate your machine and occasionally check to make sure what the control board says is what it's actually reaching on the heater. And so those are some of my top tips for, I'd say, the number one issue in heat application is that, you know, if that transfer is not peeling, it's not applying. We've done the work to be able to know we have a quality transfer. Odds are it's something in the heat press or something in our technique. And I'm going to kind of get to the next potential thing to go through with a transfer not applying, assuming our temperature is correct. We have a good understanding of time. That's probably correct. That's very easy to measure and accurate. But the next big issue, and where we see most heat applications fail, is because of pressure. And certainly, if you guys have questions or challenges you're facing, we would encourage you to just go ahead and log those in the chat, and we'll make sure that Andy will interrupt me and we'll get towards the questions as they come in. Now, pressure, time, temperature, and pressure. Again, temperature, we're going to confirm that our machine is in calibration. We're going to confirm that it's a thick enough heater, a quality build to retain the heat. You're going to get that on any Hotronix machine, but pressure can fail on any machine. And there is really the number one issue pressure fails is because of operator error. Okay. And so let's rule out a machine issue first on pressure before we get to the technique and potential operator error. So number one, I mentioned this earlier. We want to make sure I'm not going to touch it because it's extremely hot right now. It's 300 degrees, but we want to make sure our top heater is completely flat. And one way to check that is take the straight edge of a ruler, hold it from corner to corner on your heat press, and see if you can find a gap and see air anywhere in between that ruler. We want it to be completely flat because any warping of the heater or potentially machines that don't come with a flat heater in the first place are going to cause issues in application. We're going to have slight areas of pressure where it's not achieving pressure. Now, the natural instinct is to crank up that pressure and lock it down and give it more pressure and more pressure. And while that may solve the issue, because it'll kind of, with this lower pad that you see on this machine or the one on the PowerPoint screen, it'll kind of be enough to kind of squish and even out the pressure. What happens is, as we want to get into different types of products, we may end up damaging that product because we're over applying a pressure to accommodate for an uneven heater or some other issue with our heat press investment. So The heat press absolutely does make a difference. We want to make sure we have an even heater. And then we really want to make sure we're loading our products accurately. Okay, so I'm going to ask to go full screen for this demonstration, and I'm going to demonstrate, some of the ways to load a product and some of the things you want to watch out for. And so when we're loading a product, the t-shirt's pretty easy. And if you want to use your press along kit, if you purchase that, I'm going to use that to demonstrate. And the first application that I'm going to complete is the t-shirt application. It's probably the easiest, and there is a large direct to film transfer in your press along kit called Ultra Color Max that I'm going to use for the demo. And so when I'm loading shirts onto the press, I know a lot of people just lay the shirt on, right? That's okay. Sometimes it's slightly faster, but the more accurate, consistent way, and to make sure you're placing at the widest opening of the press, is actually to split your shirt and do something we call thread it on. And so splitting your shirt, find the opening, we're going to split it, and we're going to thread it onto the press. Now you'll notice on my press, I have this quick slip protector, which is like an ironing board cover that goes over the lower platen. That's going to make sure it's really easy to split that cotton fabric or that poly fabric loaded on. It's not going to snag, going to be quick and easy. I'm really not going to be really reaching too far back on the machine. Now, here's the key. When you load your product on, in order to get even pressure, look, I already had wrinkles back there. I need to make sure the item is nice and flat. So I want to make sure I'm loading from a flat position. I pull it all the way down to the seam structure of the top shoulder. And then basically I grab both corners and I'm just going to retract the collar back until it falls off of the edge. And if you're having issues with your transfers not applying, it could be, or peeling, it could be because you have uneven pressure. And the biggest area of uneven pressure is when you're pressing somewhere close to a seam, a collar, a zipper, a button, some raised obstruction on the garment. Now, t-shirts don't have a lot of raised obstruction. It's probably the easiest item in the market to print, which is why I wanted to start there. But it's still critical. Try to get these seams off of your platen, get the collar off of the platen, because that's going to give me accuracy when I'm applying. Even when I'm applying a t-shirt, I do want to start by adjusting my pressure. Here it's an over-center pressure adjustment. I'm going to start with a preheat just to remove that moisture and wrinkles from the shirt. And if you're having issues with the transfer not applying, it could be because there's a lot of moisture in your shirt as well. So step is load your shirt, make sure the surface is completely flat, free of all seams, buckles, zippers. Conduct not only a preheat before we load our shirt to start the day, but a preheat on each individual shirt, especially if it contains any natural fabrics like cotton. Cotton tends to retain moisture. That's why you'll notice your peeling issues on a lot of thicker cottons and fleece and heavier weight products. Okay, polyester usually doesn't require preheat. It releases very nice, but your natural fabrics, you always want to preheat. So with a preheat complete, then I'll be able to grab my transfer of choice. In this case, we have the Global Masterclass design that we're pulling out of the press along kit. So if you're pressing along, you should have your heat press at 290 degrees. If not, you can watch this back and follow the lead later. And then I'm going to position it down to apply. Now, one of the other common mistakes, and we'll get to it on a further slide, but I don't want to miss this opportunity, is placement. And so people really struggle on getting their design straight, placing it in the correct place. We have all types of guides available to you and resources for placement guides, sizing design guides that you can access through the STAHLS website and also through the other websites from the partners that are demonstrating here today. But I want to give you just some practical tips that I use. So what I would do on a design like this to make sure it's straight, I would take that design, I would take the graphic, especially when it's a clear carrier, and I'm looking for the edge of the graphic. And you can see I am folding, it's kind of washing out a little bit, so I'll pull it back. I'm folding the edge to edge. And so the design, I'm folding edge to edge, and then I'm just going to give myself a centering crease right on the PET carrier. So I'm just pinching this, it won't damage the transfer, and it gives me a centering crease at the top of the design, right? And so now when I go to load that on, you see I have a little centering crease, and I don't have to guess where's the center of my design. Is this straight? You guys got a great view on how I look down my heat press. The collar is dead over center, and if you follow a straight line back, it's directly to the center of the back steel brackets on this machine. On the Fusion machine, there's a post there. Like, find some visual place on the press where you can look back at center. Yes, you can invest in laser alignment tools if you want to go that far. You can shoot a centering line laser down onto the machine. There are handy little jigs available to you, or you can create your own jig that's 16 inches wide with a little notch mark to find the center in an easier way. All these are tools, but once you get going and you become an expert, even as an expert, I still do this. I pinch the center, and then I have to stand in front of the machine, to line it up. And so I position my design, and then I'll make sure that's 2 to 3 inches down from the top collar. And all of my measurements always come from the top edge of the press, because I know that's where my collar is going to be every time, because I'm draping it off the press, I'm loading it upside down, and again, I'm placing my graphic on the widest opening of the heat press, so I'm not reaching way back in the machine, especially if you have a clamshell style like I'm using here. So position your design, and I do a very simple thing where I take my two hands, they're always with you, right? And I measure on both sides to make sure that design is lined up. Just a very quick place on both sides and make sure the edges of that design are lined up, just as a double check. And then you're just going to lock the heat press down for the application. Now, it's tough to see, the machine's counting down, but there is a digital pressure readout on the back of the machine, and that little red light is an indicator. It travels from 0 to 9 on the machine. And so in this particular case, it was reading a 7, which is a nice medium to firm pressure. On that 0 to 9 scale, 1 to 3 is light, 4 to 6 is medium, 7 to 9 is firm pressure. Ultracolor Max applies at a medium pressure. So technically I could apply that anywhere to 4 or 6. I had it on a 7. It works slightly over the pressure too, but then I don't have to guess, does this feel like a light? Does this feel like a medium? Does this feel like a heavy? So when you apply products like that, you should have consistency from application to application. There are no seams up there. There's no variance in what I'm doing. The machine measures everything for me, and I can have confidence that my first shirt is going to match shirt number 50. So getting your item flat is absolutely critical to success. Okay, so t-shirts are easy. Now, here's the problem. What happens when I go to load a more complex item? And in this particular case, I'm going to use something that's not in your kit, but very popular just to illustrate it. And that is a hooded sweatshirt. I could have also picked a racerback tank. I could have picked a backpack, lots of different items that are weird shapes that have lots of seam structure. See, when I load this sweatshirt on to my 16 by 20 attachment, what happens is no matter what I do to get to that front placement area, I'm going to have the pocket up on the platen, and that's going to create a potential pressure issue. Now, typically your design would be far enough away from that pocket where it's not going to have dropout. But what happens is if you're too close to that pocket, you have a little bit of dropout in pressure, your design may peel or not apply. As we get to the scorching section here in a little while, the other risk is as you have seams up onto the pressing area, especially if it has any synthetic fibers in it, that will probably be the area that will scorch, because all of that pressure is coming down onto that raised little seam on your heat press. It's absorbing a lot of the pressure. Your lower areas or your valleys of your shirt aren't receiving what you think is the pressure, and those areas of your shirt scorch up. Sometimes that happens when the collar's up on the press, or you have some side seams that are attached to where your arms are, or even on the pocket on a hoodie. And so when you're thinking of your heat press investment, I'm sure you've heard this today. I haven't watched all the classes, but I know our presenters is like, we have to find a way to get that item flat. Okay, it's pretty easy on this machine. We take off the platen. There's a little latch there, and we remove our 16 by 20 platen. Just set that one to the side. It's a little warm. And then I'm going to take a more appropriate size platen. In this case, I'm going to use the 11 by 15 inch, which can be loaded portrait or landscape. This is the perfect size, not only for a lot of the tote bags that are out on the market, a lot of the slimmer cut t-shirts, whether that's for youth or some women's apparel or fitness apparel, but also for this front placement on a hoodie. Now with the lower platen loaded, I can easily split my hoodie, again, thread it onto the machine. And now I get to this nice front pressing panel where the pocket is falling off of the back edge. All my drawstrings and seam structures are falling off of the front edge, and I'm prepared to preheat and press. Okay, so getting your item flat is absolutely critical to success. And any platen that you're using, not any, I would say most platens that you're using that are larger in size, like even our 6 by 20 leg and sleeve, the 11 by 15, the 16 by 20, all of those I do recommend getting this quick slip cover, which is like an ironing board cover that just slides down over the platen. that helps you load your item quick. So absolutely, Laura, you can buy platen covers to fit the 11 by 15 platen. And again, you can rotate this platen portrait or landscape. Very easy to do different shapes of items. Now, there comes some products that are just nearly impossible to get flat. So I'm going to load a little 6 by 10 platen. There is a cover for this. I don't like to use the covers personally on like 6 by 10 and smaller because it's easy for me to split my item and load it over, like just keep it open until it fits. And actually, I like the grip to keep my item from sliding off because usually the item's bigger than the print area because I use this a lot for bags and sleeves and those sorts of things. But I'll load this 6 by 10 platen to illustrate a point. We sent you this lovely sling bag. Let's see, what is it? It's the Port Authority cross body backpack. And when this came in the press along kit and I received it to my house, I'm like, well, that's challenging. And so it's great to illustrate this point. You have to find a way to try to get this print zone flat. Let's say, we'll mix it up a little bit because I like to do that. Let's say I wanted to put my direct to film print on this bag because certainly it would be a great choice. It would work. I love Ultra Color Max transfers on bags and really low cost graphic here and nice promo item that you can create. But the challenge is, how am I going to print this? And so when I look at the zipper structure, yes, I can open this big pocket. I can kind of unzip this. Ideally, I'd like to get in this pocket, right? So you see that? There's a zipper here, this front pocket, like that's the placement area I want. But when I split that and try to load it, like there's no way that pocket's going to fit over the base of my machine. Now, if you have the Fusion, you have the Air Fusion, the base is a little bit smaller, but even so, this 6 by 10 platen is probably a little bit too big to accommodate that placement area. So if you wanted the exact right tool for a job, gosh, in this case, I wish I had the Fusion. I wish I had a 4x4 attachment. That probably would get the job done the fastest and the easiest, but I want to get the job done and show you how to work around it and illustrate some other things. So platen is always choice number one. If I can find a platen that can just split and load my item and print it, that's going to be the most efficient, most accurate way to print. As we're seeing in the example here, that's not always possible. And so I need to explore other solutions. And here, I would like to say one of the key ways to get your item flat outside of a changeable platen would be what we call a print perfect pad. So almost like, well, it's the same material that's on the bottom of your platens. It's just loose, like a mouse pad like material, or heat press pillows. So I have a drawer full of these that I pull out in lots of different sizes for lots of different things. And I even got to the point, I'll show you. I was doing one challenging thing I couldn't figure out, right? And you can see the rough edge on this one. I even cut them apart to size sometimes to do little different tough to do areas. So it's great to have these around to cut them apart for specific jobs or specific products you want to sell. But on this particular bag, I probably am going to need the help of not only the platen, but one of these. So how do I choose between these? I'm going to open it up to the audience to see what are you using, pillows or pads? And why do you think you should use one or the other? Mainly because I need to catch my breath and take a drink of water. So help me out, guys. All right, I'm sure you guys are typing in. Let me give you the answer. A pad, I can achieve any pressure I want on a platen or a pad, including firm pressure, okay? It's a medium density surface. A pillow, while it accomplishes the same thing, it's a low density surface. So I can achieve a light and a medium pressure on a pillow, but I cannot achieve a firm pressure, okay? So whenever you're choosing between pillows and pads, yeah, you got it. Nice answer. Somebody's been watching the videos or learning. So whenever you're choosing between these, the pads are much more flexible, allowing you to use them with any type of transfer, from direct to film to screen printed to vinyl, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the only drawbacks of the pads is like seams don't sink into them. And so there are some products where I want the seam to sink down in, and I'll show you an example of that. For that, I go to a pillow and I make sure I'm choosing a transfer with a light or medium pressure. Certainly direct to film has that flexibility. I'd be fine there. But in this case, I'm going to pick a pad because I want to show you how that works and show you how to conquer this. So what I would do is I would open this pocket because I don't want it sticking together. I'm going to take my print perfect pad. I'm going to just slide it down into the pocket, right? Slides down nice and easy. And then I'm going to take my whole large pocket, and now let's try to split that and thread it on the machine. Now, I want to keep some context, right? My bag's been loaded sideways, but now I can get that whole bag loaded. I can get rid of the majority of the bulk and the strap and everything, the buckles underneath here, and I can split that pocket and get rid of this top zipper and have it fall right over the edge of the pad. Okay, so now when I lock the machine down, I have a model that gets me this nice pressure area where my pad is raised up above that zipper in all of my seam structure. Does that make sense? Now, of course, whenever you load additional thickness onto the press, you want to make sure your pressure is adjusted, because I was pressing on an extremely flat surface, so this is going to be a ton of pressure on this application area. I also like to use a cover sheet to protect my item anytime I'm worried about it scorching. In this case, I am. And so I'm just going to cover it and protect it. You can see I can't even lock the machine down. There's so much pressure. So I adjust the pressure backwards. If you don't like adjusting pressure by an air machine, it does it automatically for you based on any thickness in there. One of the major benefits of an air machine is you don't have to do what I'm doing now, but this isn't too bad if you're setting up for a job. And now when I lock it down, I get a pressure readout. Now I want to see if you guys have been paying attention. You're going to answer this to yourself. I was aiming to get the item flat. That's going to allow me to not gloss up any seams. It's also going to allow a nice flat, even pressure for adhesion so my transfer doesn't peel. Now I've done something here that's pretty important, is I've created this much smaller zone that the pressure is being applied to. If you remember, I pressed my full t-shirt transfer at a pressure of 7. What should I press that same direct-to-film transfer, just smaller size, on this smaller pad? What pressure do you think I should have on my machine? Take a guess, throw it in. 4. All right, good guess. All right, I didn't plan this, but we're going to do it together. So you guys know I like math. If you've attended any of the class by now. So remember, that t-shirt was done on a 16 by 20 platen. So 16 times 20 is 320 square inches. Okay. This isn't even a full 6 by 10. It's more like a 4 by 4 surface by the time I loaded that pillow. So 4 times 4 is 16, right? So the difference between the pressure coming down on 320 square inches versus the pressure coming down on 16 square inches is extreme, right? And so this is kind of like a precursor. If you're noticing scorching, I know a lot of people see damaging on garments when they're using pads or smaller platens. That's because you are killing it with way too much pressure. We need to take that 7 pressure and at a minimum, cut it in half. That's if it were 160 square inches. I'm even going to go further. Like I'm going to try to get the pressure like a 1 or a 2 for this super small area. So you get it? It's like a fraction of the square inches. All that pressure coming down with how applied pressure works. I'm going to want to reduce that pressure quite a bit. So I was at a 3. Let me reduce it even further just to show you it'll work. I'm down at a 2, and I'm going to go ahead and run my application at a 2. This is going to do 2 things. It's going to give me accurate pressure. It's not going to wear out my arm. And that's going to be helpful as I'm completing a job. And so then we take our transfer, we apply it where we want to go. Direct to film, you can use a cover sheet if you want, right? And so if you want to use a cover sheet, no problem. To cover it up, make sure you know your bag's loaded sideways, not normal, so you don't place your graphic 90 degrees or upside down, right? And then you lock your machine down. So lots of good guesses. We're all over the place. And Chris asked the question, would a pillow be better for this application? Certainly a pillow could work. Hot peels right away. That's what I love about this Ultracolor Max transfer. Let me show you this and I'm going to answer that question. Unzip the bag. All I'm going to do is reach in, take this out, and let's show you, the finished result. Just sharp, no marking on the bag, nice soft feel of that transfer. Very nice, easy application, no damages at all to the zipper, the seams, because those were all hanging off the edge. And so you look at this and you get intimidated, but if you have the right tools and the right technique and the right know-how, you can absolutely do products like this. So why did I use the pad instead of the pillow? Certainly I could have used either. If I would have tried to load a pillow, and honestly didn't even try it, so let's try it now. The pillow size I have, I think it's just slightly too big. to fit in that pocket. So in this case, the pad was just a little smaller. This pillow's a little big to fit in that pocket, so it would be wrinkling up and causing challenges. But the pillow absolutely would have worked, Chris. To your point, I will say the pillow would compress more, so I might get, some application to this little rubber closure on the zipper, and so that would be a risk on the particular bag in your press along kit. Okay. So back to the PowerPoint for a second, then I'm going to take some questions. But I want to make sure that we're hitting this. And yeah, can the bag be done on the 360 IQ? Actually, we're going to do that here in a moment. I'm going to show you that. So pressure, important to get 100% flat. That comes down to not only your even heater, but more than that, your loading products, making sure you're leveraging platens, pads, and pillows appropriately, making sure you have a machine that measures pressure. And then like we did for the smaller surface area, adjusting the pressure down for smaller surfaces so we're not over applying the pressure and either driving the print through the bag or damaging the product itself. So let's go ahead and take some questions. Andy, if you want to pin some up there, come on and ask me. I'm good with either way. Okay. Okay, so what can you do if you don't have a smaller platens? Cassie, my best suggestion would be to buy pillows and pads and try to make do with that. I will say the flexibility of your heat press and the platens you own is going to have a direct impact on the product assortment you can offer. That's why, there's a lot of great things about a Hotronix heat press, but when I'm talking to people, they're like, why Hotronix versus anything else? Like, at its most fundamental level, it can just print more items, right? And that's because of the threadability, the cantilever design, and the interchangeable attachments. Like, there's just so much more that you can sell with the Hotronix press behind your business, but you can make do with pillow pads. But I'm not going to act as if you could really make this in a good way on a 16 by 20 press without interchangeable attachments and a threadable design, because we would have been dealing with a lot of bulk here. Could you make it? Maybe. Is it going to come out at the quality of somebody with a Hotronix press can make it? Absolutely not. All right, another question. DTF transfers come on a roll of film, not pre-cut. How do you ensure you have cut each design the same, looking for the center when folding in half? Okay, so let me clarify. When I folded that design in half, I didn't care at all about how the carrier was cut. The only thing I cared was about the graphic, right? You can see through that and you can get to the graphic. So what I was folding back to back to find the center was the edges of the graphic, not the carrier, right? And then I was pinching. And so I don't care if it's cut crooked. I'm simply centering based on edge to edge of the outermost parts of the graphic to find that center. You stumped me, Cassie. I don't know. Are they reusable? Does anybody know that answer? I think they are, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, the price isn't bad to be able to check your press. But if one of my folks can help me in the chat that may know that answer, somebody that's used them, on if the heat strips are reusable. And what other material can be used on this particular bag? I mean, there's lots of choices, right? I believe this is I believe it's a denier poly bag. Could be a nylon, but I believe it's a denier poly bag. See if it says inside. Yeah, 100% polyester. So on 100% polyester, my choices are wide open. I really just have to think about something that's going to apply at a lower temperature. So I'm not going to scorch the product, right? And we're going to go through that in a moment, because I think with what we set you up with your pack in with a dimensional logo, we'll see there may be some concern for scorching on that. So we're going to explore that here in a moment. But lots of products, heat transfer vinyl, could use a screen printed transfer, direct to film transfer. Flock would be nice on that bag. There's so many. And then, yeah, so you can heat press direct to film onto cardboard as well. Actually, that's how these boxes were made. With your press along kits, we pressed direct to film right on the front of there and applied that. Excuse me for 1 second, guys. Not only is it getting hot in this room, it's getting pretty dry in this room from running these heat presses and talking all day. So pressure, heat, or time, most important, all of them. I would say if you miss one of them, there's risk in the process with application and with durability. I will say most people fail at pressure, right? Because pressure has a little bit of element of, the machine can do everything right, and the operator can still screw up the pressure with how they load their item. It's pretty tough to screw up temperature in time if you have an accurate machine. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint for a bit. We'll come back to questions here in a moment. Okay, so moving right along, hopefully we understand that if we have peeling or transfers not applying, we have some tips on how to work through that, whether it's pressure, accurate heat, checking that. We talked a bit about this and gave you some tips already, but the other area of trouble we usually see is misaligned transfers. I'm not going to spend time going too deep here, but I wanted to point out that tag-along platen does help with loading your shirt straight, and that's a big deal, especially when you get into larger sizes of apparel. Sometimes it's difficult to know, is that shirt loaded straight, and you're kind of holding out the edges of your shirt, trying to figure it out. Basically, the way this platen is designed, it has that area, that prong that comes through the neck, just like somebody would be wearing it, and it's angled just like a wearer's shoulders. And so it's very fast, very easy to load that straight, and it even gives you some nice sight lines to be able to hit a left chest. And so a left chest graphic, which we're going to do on here in a moment, what I would do is I would pinch top shoulder and run a vertical line down. And so I don't have a tag along in my home studio here. So we're going to do this on a 16 by 20, but I do want to say that placing your transfers, loading your shirt straight are so much easier on this tag along platen than any other platen on the market. I also want to give you a tip that in the case where you are decorating a product, sometimes that you need the cap press for because of the lower heat, often it's better to line up your transfer first, tape it into place with thermotape, and then move that product to the heat press. And so I do that a lot when I'm putting dimensional emblems on left chest graphics for performance wear, on textured fabrics like Sherpa, on anything that's really a lot larger than my press. I even tape off graphics when I'm doing, I think we talked about this earlier, but doing like pop-up tents and awnings, tape out those graphics and then move them across your heat press surface, because it'll be impossible to line something up straight once it gets to your heat press if you can't see the majority of the product on the pressing surface. And that's one of the reasons I'm always recommending a 16 by 20 platen as well, is because with the 16 by 20 platen, yeah, your prints may not be that big. You have the flexibility to make them that big, but it's more about being able to see the majority of the garment to make placing your graphics easier. And so you all that ordered the press along kit should have got this nice thread fast fleece garment, the ultimate fleece crew. This is what we're going to use for our example. So whenever you're lining up left chest, I'll just hold it up to me like I'm wearing it. Basically the left chest, when I say pinch top shoulder, I'm pinching right here where the collar meets the top shoulder, and I'm running a vertical line down about 6 to 7 inches, depending on the size of the garment. That's going to be the center of my graphic. Okay. That's one of the biggest mysteries with placement, and the left chest application can be one of the best branding locations, certainly one of the most profitable, because small transfers are typically less money. But a lot of people don't know how to place them. So again, we're going to split load this. I'm just going to retract the collar, right? And then I'm going to hold up top left shoulder, and I'm going to run a vertical line down for my placement of my transfer. Again, you can have a cardboard jig that you know is 6 inches. I have my hands, I know that's 6 inches, so I'm really just taking that 6 inches down, and I know, boom, right there where my pinky hits is center of my left chest graphic. So just real practical, having some of the tools to be able to place those graphics. Now, we did have the left chest graphic that we just press in your press along kit. And so we'll grab that one and show you how to do it. Preheat, right? I changed the platen. I have no pressure, so that wouldn't have worked out well because I removed that Print Perfect pad. So I'm increasing my pressure. There, I'm running about an 8. Let's retract it a bit. And now it's reading a 6. So I'm good to run at a 6. Preheat again, preheat fleece a little more. I'm going to take that graphic 6 inches down. That's my left chest. Again, I could have folded my graphic back to back for a centering line and then just heat apply it. So you can use all parts of this press to apply your graphics. I would caution you on pressing something like right up to the edge, but If you have a good press, you have a good pressure readout, you're going to get accuracy across the whole length of the platen. Once it's done, peel away the backing, and we have a perfectly placed left chest design. And so people make mistakes. Typically, they're going too far under the arm, too far down, which is not very flattering on the wearers. So you want to make sure you use that top shoulder, know your placement specs, and we have guides again over on the website to help you with all of your placement specs to be able to solve for that. All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint. All right, my favorite, guys, and probably the biggest issue is scorching, right? Even experts still struggle with this. I know we've talked about this a little bit, and you know, I built this acronym on a flight because I'm like, I need some way to remember how to solve for scorching, right? And let's try to make it simple. And the reason that I tried to build around this word arch, honestly, is because when I think of like how you as a decorator get from here in your business, which may be good money, good profit on these products, to get to over here, premium, where you can experience healthier margins. It's all about being able to decorate more performance fabrics, more challenging items, more premium items. And so making that leap is going to pay off for you, but it's not simple to do, right? You can't do it with the cheapest machinery on the market. You can't do it without investment into the tools in your business, right? You can't accommodate all the products that you could accommodate, whether that's in a decoration standpoint or a blank standpoint, without following these rules to really try to eliminate or reduce scorching. And so when we're talking about scorching, we've talked a lot about pressure. Accurate pressure is important. Again, most people are scorching because they're over applying pressure. That typically happens on small surfaces because they're way over applying the pressure. Next is the R. We want to source reduced temperature transfers. And so the patch that came in your kit, if you read your application instructions, maybe you don't have them. This is called Flex Style, right? It's a beautiful dimensional emblem and patch, has lots of rise, lots of dimension. Here in the US market, it comes in these basic styles, which is the domed. It also comes in metallic styles, right? And so here's an example of a hat I decorated with it in a metallic style, right? And so you can see the rays off the hat, no damaging, no creasing of the cap. So just a really cool product. Now, the challenge with this product is when I read my application instructions, it says upper heat only, 360 degrees, 15 to 20 seconds. It also tells me to preheat my bottom platen for 60 seconds and my fabric for 15 to 20 seconds. So that's a lot of time and a lot of risk. 360 degrees for 20 seconds is going to damage most premium fabrics on the market. And so it's really important that I try to source transfers that if I have top heat only and I don't have lower heat, which we're going to get to in a second, that press at lower temperatures. I may not be able to go as far as I could with doing all of the products without scorching if you don't solve for every letter in this acronym. But certainly you can start with direct to film transfers that apply at 290 degrees, lower temp heat transfer vinyls, and make sure you have accurate pressure, reduced temperature transfers. And you can do a lot of performance wear out there in the market with top heat only. However, once you get to a certain point, you're still going to have issues with some transfers like the Flex Style patch. And so we really need to solve for using a correct cover sheet and also using the heated lower platen. And I'll demonstrate it on the 360 IQ here. But what we see here is we see the secondary application for the patch, for the kit that was in the pack. It is 280 degrees on top, 320 degrees on bottom. And there's a typo. We actually want this to be for 30 seconds, okay, rather than 12 to 15 seconds. But what's really cool about this application, it's calling out to use a foam cover pad. So most people are familiar with these types of cover sheets, butcher paper, craft paper, Teflon, kind of use them interchangeably. They basically do the same thing. It's just preference and cost and like how they handle for you. Yes, they'll slightly change the finish of your transfer if you do it as like a post step on your transfer. But when we're talking about reducing scorch marks, those aren't going to solve or do any miracles for you. What we really get into is two types of cover pads. We have the flexible application pad, which was the thin gray cover pad we showed earlier, and we have the foam cover pad, right? And so this is an actual foam material that comes in 1/8 inch thick, and it also comes in 1/4 inch thick. And we can use these cover sheets to help protect the item from the top heat so we're not damaging the face of the item. These are an absolute necessity if you want to decorate hats without scorching them. It's also an absolute necessity if you want to put dimensional patches onto performance polos, jackets, even this bag that we're about to do here in a moment. Okay, so having the correct cover sheet, having a foam cover pad that helps to protect the face of your item while still letting the heat travel through, and then really connecting it with the H, with the heated lower platen, right? The majority of the heat is going to come from underneath. And so I want to show you a couple applications. I am going to decorate this onto a bag in a moment, but before I go there, I want to show you a more traditional application. And again, I want to talk about jumping from basic to premium. And so in this case, I'm going to grab what I think is one of the more premium brands on the market, at least here in the US, is a Carhartt structured cap, right? So really high-end cap, Carhartt cap. This one came from Sanmar, who you heard from in one of our sessions earlier. And that's what we're going to decorate. You can see it's a fused buckram, really nice structure to it. This would make a lot of people nervous, creasing, scorching, damaging it. But with what we can provide with accurate pressure, correct cover sheet, reduced heat transfer, and a heated lower platen, I did those backwards, but you get the point. We can flip that sweatband out, right? We can load that hat onto our 360 IQ machine, right? Just moving it into place. This is 320 degrees coming up from the bottom heat right here, but it's not hot to the touch, right? It's not going to burn me. This would burn me at the pure metal at 280 degrees. I'm going to lock down that hold down device, and you won't be able to see this that well, but basically I'm going to do that massaging technique to make sure that hat is completely flat. Just going to kiss the heater against it, not lock it down to warm it, to prepare it to receive my transfer. And then I'm going to grab my transfer of choice, position it down, and apply it. Now, I've done a lot of flex style transfers here in my little side hustle, and this is where I keep them. And so I'm just going to open this box up to show you, like, these are literally all the samples I've done in flex style transfers, right, for different potential clients. So there's hundreds in there. And so let me just dig through here and find a cool one. These were all prospects, right? Construction companies that mailed sample hats out to. So here's a local one in a town I grew up here in southwestern Pennsylvania called Fairchance Construction. And so I have 2 of these left. They come in samples, packs of 5, right? And so it's a dimensional transfer. All I'm going to do is peel the backing. You have one in your press along kit as well with just a different logo. Toughest part for me is peeling the backing. All right, it has a heat activated adhesive on the back. So there's the adhesive side, and there's the nice dimensional metal design. I mean, this is a premium logo. I worry if I press that with top heat only, not only would I damage this cap, but I would probably melt the transfer. And so I'm just gonna bend it a bit. I'm gonna place it right over the seam of my cap, cover it with my correct cover sheet, which is the 1/8 inch pad. And then I'm going to adjust this. I was pressing some DTF transfers on it the other day, so I'm adjusting it up to 30 seconds. And I'm going to lock the machine down. I got to make sure it accepts my timer, or it won't engage. There it is, right? And then the magnet will grab when I lock the machine down. And so what I always say is, because I have the protective cover pad, the correct cover sheet, because I'm heating from underneath, it's unbelievable. Like, you normally damage this hat with 10 seconds with top heat only, but because of this strategy and solving for everything in that arch methodology, I'm able to completely remove the heat press mark, not only on this hat, but I could put this same logo on performance polos, and we've done it. Automatically opens, unlock the machine, and then basically I'll take the excess edge and peel it away, and you can see just really high-end, durable logo, no marking of the hat. And so that is the same technique that I'm going to approach with my bag. Now, the difference is, I'm not sure I can split this pocket open. I don't have a Teflon sheet, but normally I would cut a Teflon sheet and place it in the pocket to keep the pocket from sticking together so the pocket's still usable. I don't have a Teflon sheet here, so I'm going to do the best I can with getting it off the press after it's applied, but we'll split the main pocket open. I'm going to, on a small item, it's a little easier. Big item, I don't know that you'd be able to do it on this press, which is why the benefit of the power platens for this, the heated lower platens that are dedicated for this. I position that on. I'm just kind of feeling, making sure that's flat, right? and then I'll take whatever my patch of choice is, position it on and apply. Now this patch is a little bit too wide for my placement area. So there's another good tip, is just making sure that you've considered the size of your patch as it relates to the platen that you're going to have to use to accommodate your product. So let's grab something a little bit smaller that I know is going to fit on there. And it's a blue one, so let's grab a blue logo here. So this is the same exact product as what's in your press along kit. It's just a different logo in a domed style. And so same concept, we'll peel this back, position it on, trying to make sure I get to the center. This is another one of those areas, if you're running production, you'd pre-tape this design, or you take a little piece of chalk before you load your item on and you just chalk mark the center on where you want your design, put an X there, place a design right over the X. Okay, just little tips and hacks to be successful, making sure I'm at my 30 seconds, and then lock the machine down. Okay, so you see now I'm able to do dimensional on these products. So again, a lot of issues, a lot of concerns that you can have with heat applying if you don't have the right tools and the right technique and the right know-how, but you've taken a great start. You're here, you're at the masterclass learning how to prevent these things before they show up, to be able to separate you from all the other decorators that are out there. So let's go ahead and take a couple questions as we're finalizing our countdown and showing you the final product. So the presses I've been using, again, I want to get this off. I want to make sure that pocket still opens up, get that patch flat, right? So it doesn't stay in the curved position as the adhesive cools down. And so looks phenomenal. Like, I think people would buy this, pair this sample with a cap, same logo, deliver it. There's no way you're not getting that order. So my presses that I've invested in, the Hotronix 360 IQ, the absolute biggest moneymaker out there in the industry right now for heat printing. And I think you've just seen why. And the Hotronix Auto Clam. I love the Fusion. As you can see here, I could get rid of the display racks for sure, but I didn't have space for a Fusion because I needed it to go right up against the wall. And I wanted something that opened and closed within its own footprint, because this is a spare bedroom that's now an office. And so space was really important to me with having that flexibility. And I just used a butcher block countertop and built it here with drawers to build my workspace. And when I was running more business out of here, of course, I didn't have the shelves. We'll talk about layout later, but I had lots of space on the side of the machine. All right, a couple more questions and then we'll conclude. Yeah, good question, Brooke. Logo placement on the extra small versus a 5XL. You're going to have to make adjustments, right? I would not put that logo on a 5XL at the same location as an extra small. So you're going to have to use your judgment. Within that, certainly the extra small is probably going to be, I said 6 and 7 to 7 inches is the target. It's probably going to run more like 5 inches, where your double XL may flex up to 8 inches. Okay, or your 5XL, sorry. So lay those out, take a look at them, hang them on a mannequin is a tip I've heard before, and then get a visual of it and create your specs. And yeah, 6 to 7 down is the actual middle of the graphic, is where I center it. And obviously, if you have like a abnormally large graphic, like vertically versus horizontally, not as proportionate, you'll have to make a visual adjustment, but that's a frame of reference. So do you not recommend pressing hats with the double heated platens, at least the specialty type patches? No, I think I said, yeah, I love pressing hats with both the double heated platens. What I don't recommend is trying to build a headwear business with top heat only. You can certainly decorate unstructured caps, like the cotton twill caps that don't have the structured backing, and have success there, like the dad caps, they're called. But if you want to decorate structured caps, a lot of the stuff that's out there, you're going to need top and bottom heat to be really successful with patches.